Mom and I are driving and the verdict's in. So they just started yesterday contemplating the verdict. Want the audience to stay seated after the verdict's read. We're going to Nordstrom Rack and her. Did you watch any of the trial, Mom?
Very little. I saw where she said she wouldn't have done anything differently.
I told you that.
But I think she also saw it. She was on the stand. Looked like she'd broken into in hides.
That is correct. I am.
They need to talk louder.
Individually?
Sure.
Okay. On count 1 of involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Holy cow.
On count 2 of involuntary manslaughter in regards to Tate Muir, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 3, as to involuntary manslaughter regarding Hannah St. Juliana, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And in count 4 of involuntary manslaughter against Justin Schilling, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Thank you for
Guilty
seat number 1. Is that your verdict? It is. Jury seat number 2.
of 4 charges of involuntary manslaughter
Yes. Jury seat number 5.
related to the November 21st shooting at Oxford High School that killed 4 children. Now, that is the very first time that parents in the United States have been charged. Her husband will be tried, I believe, in March. And first time charged and first time guilty. Madison Baldwin, Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meyer, and Justin Schilling. So we were talking about this with my dad this morning, my mother and I. And my dad, his kind of initial thing is like, well, the parent, she didn't know he was going to murder people. And I thought that the prosecutor brought up a really good point. The prosecutor said she wasn't charged with that. Like, that charge would have been an accomplice to murder. She was charged with involuntary manslaughter. She didn't know he was going to kill people, but did she take this kind of reasonable action within the law? And to me, she didn't. What do you think, Mom?
No. She didn't.
I think the buying the
Warning
gun.
signs were everywhere.
Yeah, I think the buying the gun was the problem. I think if he had the journal and said, my parents won't get me help, I think all of that, I think it was the gun buying that was the problem. Personally. And I guess maybe we'll hear maybe later, maybe we won't. So now there will be sentencing today. The sentencing will come later, I assume. A lot of sitting and rising. Wow. You don't agree with sentencing a minor to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You cannot sentence a child to life in prison. Well, you clearly can, because somebody did. If you might not agree with it, but they did. I don't know if I really have. I hadn't thought enough about it to know. I think the whole thing is a shame. It seems like whenever there are these terrible crimes, like in Rocky Mount where we're from, a man came and murdered 3 people at the church.
Oh, well, he murdered Debbie.
Yeah.
And almost murdered Eve.
So, and that was, oh, watch out, Mom. That was a friend of my mom's, and he was wasn't he on drugs, and he had all sorts of things, right?
Homeless, and used to come in there for bread, and they'd always, fix him something. Never violent before.
So I think you can always find a reason that somebody did something, It's like, how do you separate what happened as a child? Like my dad said, well, what if he was just, crazy? And I was like, but I don't think so. Like, these people that kill their classmates, these are not well-adjusted, happy children. These are children that 100% of the time feel excluded and
like you said,
bullied out, like outcast. It's it's not, maybe there's a combo, but there is something that's clearly evident. There's a common denominator. So anyway, I don't know about that, but I think this sends a very loud message, which I believe we need at this point, and that you cannot buy your 15-year-old a handgun, just like you can't give your 15-year-old a vodka drink and send them in a car, right? I mean, if you do that, you're going to jail. And I think we take that seriously. And I'm sure at the time there was this discussion of, well, I mean, they didn't make the child drink the alcohol. This is hard to drive up here, Mom.
Oh yeah, it's bad.
Oh, like up in the
I don't
depths of
come
Miami.
here by myself anymore.
Yeah. That day, and I think some people say, well, Mom asked, why didn't the school check the backpack? I know they wish they had, but if the parents hadn't bought the gun, the parents knew there was a gun. The mother texts Ethan or texts the shooter and says, don't do it. And she said, well, I thought he was going to kill himself. No, she didn't. I don't think. And she repeatedly said, I would not have done anything differently. And I guess she was saying that to be innocent. But at this point, to me, she might as well, I don't know. I don't think I value my freedom enough. I think I would just be honest. I would be honest. I think that would go really far with, you're right. I was wrong. I think the not taking responsibility for it makes people unsympathetic, She seemed more concerned about herself. But she cared. I mean, she checked Power School every day. I said last week on a video, I don't even know how to get into Power School. She, he had cavities. He had braces. They had to take the braces off and get the cavities fixed. Like, they had one child. She seemed diligent. She took him to the dermatologist. There was a spot on his back. But I do think she had a lot going on. And I get it. I have 4 children, the littlest with special needs, and there is a lot to juggle. I really get it. But she had one child, and instead of 3 more or another child with special needs, she had an affair. She was, swinging.
Really?
Yeah. So her brain, she wasn't busy dealing with autism. She was busy dealing with what she felt like dealing with. And that's, again, if you're going to have children, like, step up, buck up, toots. Anyway. And you might say, well, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you something right now. If one of my children does something terrible, I will sit here and tell you, I did the best I could. Would you say that about me, Mom?
Yeah.
So easy.
I could have done better.
Really? No, I don't think you could have. What would you have done differently?
I'd have been more present for you.
Oh, she was cooking dinner. She valued dinner. Well, I tell you what.
We valued those nights when Dad would be gone.
Yeah, we ate hot dogs at the Zip Mart. She's really more like me. She was just married to somebody. I said recently to Blair or something, she said, Daddy's going to be late. And I said, well, why are you telling me it's not my problem? And I said, I mean, you're related to him, not me. She goes, well, who chose him as a husband? You determined my fate. That's what she said. It's my 14-year-old who is think she's a prodigy. So anyway, you know, I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
I don't have no regrets. And it doesn't mean you wouldn't have, you know, maybe not yelled at somebody sometime, but generally, I ain't buying anybody any handgun. So, you don't feel like you could say you've done the absolute best each and every day. Well, nobody feels like that. If you did that, you'd be thin. I mean, hell.
You wouldn't eat that hot fudge sundae.
Yeah. No. Ain't nobody talking